Hi, I'm Jeff Jordan. I'm one of the general partners in Andreessen Horowitz, and I'm here to talk about marketplaces. I've had the privilege in my almost 2 decades in Silicon Valley to work with a lot of marketplaces. I managed eBay.com, OpenTable.com. I'm an investor in Airbnb, OfferUp, and Instacart. And I hope to spend the next few minutes telling you why we love marketplaces. A lot of consumers would look at this auction and say they're virtually identical. I was searching for a football. I had to get used to that versus soccer ball. You get on eBay, you get a listing of footballs. On Amazon, you get a listing of footballs. They're identical, right? From the consumer perspective, yes. From the investor perspective, they could not be more different. Marketplaces, which we define as many-to-many, tend towards a single winner, and those moats enable margins. A retailer, on the other hand, which would be one-to-many, typically experiences perfect competition. Prices get competed down. There are no moats. As a result, typically, there aren't a lot of margins in these businesses. So this is what I call the wheel. The wheel is code for network effects in presentations. The wheel signifies network effects, and a network effect is where the entire network gets more valuable the more people who use it. So a typical network effect would be buyers benefit from more sellers, and sellers benefit from more buyers. And when that wheel starts turning, it starts to become something that's very hard to compete with, because if you're a seller, you have to be there because the buyers are there. If you're a buyer, you want to go where all the sellers are. And so typically, that creates a natural network effect. Very hard to achieve, but once you've achieved it, it's a very good thing. So let's go through a few examples with which I'm familiar. And these are virtually out of the investor presentations. At eBay, we used to show the wheel. And in eBay's case, it was buyers benefit from more sellers, and sellers benefit from more buyers. And this strength of the network effect was tested really early. When I first joined, 2 of the most powerful internet companies were Amazon and Yahoo. One is still powerful. In that case, both launched auction businesses to compete with eBay early in the day. And both quickly got a lot of supply because they listed it, there were no listing fees. They required no economics. And no consumers went. Both businesses were DOA, and they abandoned it as quickly as they could. It just shows you the power of a network effect. 2 really well-resourced companies with massive user bases failed utterly in their attempt to compete with a fledgling auction business. So eBay worked out pretty well. It was founded in 1994. Gross merchandise sales last year was about $83 billion. Revenue just under $9 billion. Free cash flow $3 billion a year. The market cap, we said 30 to 40. Actually, today it's right in the middle, $35 billion. Total venture capital invested was under $10 million. Pretty good return on this. So very nice for investors. Second one, OpenTable. When I joined OpenTable, it just had a wicked network effect. The more restaurants attracted more diners, the more diners attracted more restaurants. This network effect is not quite as strong yet in the UK and Germany as it is in the US, but in the US, a restaurant basically almost has to be on OpenTable because that's where all the diners make their dining decisions. So we told our investors during our IPO roadshow that we had a network effect. And it was, we made the statement that a restaurant would be irrational to use a competing service, even if it was free. And this was tested multiple times after we published the S1, and people saw what a good business this was. I think we had 45% EBITDA margins in the S1. So it attracted a lot of competition. One competitor, Urban Spoon, built a competing service on an iPad and gave the iPad to the restaurants with the free service and said, you don't have to use OpenTable anymore. A lot of restaurants tried it, and they came right back to OpenTable because Urban Spoon lacked any diners. I mean, it's just the strength of a network effect. They went back to paying us our $500, $1,000 a month because we filled their tables where the free service looked like that. And OpenTable worked out well for investors. We went public in May 2009. When I announced I was leaving in May 2011, the price was $120. I like to think the last tick is the result of my leaving. I don't know if that's the case, but it feels good for the ego. But this is 5x increase in value in just under 2 years. I mean, a network effect can deliver a lot of values. And we believe one of our investments, Airbnb, has strong network effects. More hosts attract more guests attract more hosts. I will admit, I'm the board member on Airbnb. I thought it was one of the silliest ideas I'd ever heard of when I first thought of it. Some stranger staying on my couch, me staying in a stranger's bedroom, kind of not what I was looking for. And then I saw this founder, CEO, Brian Chesky, presented at an investor conference a number of years ago. Now, I'm in the back row. It's a closed conference. He's disclosing some stuff, and my jaw hits the table. He is describing eBay in the early days, a quaint little idea that the community took and took in new and expanded ways. In eBay, it was selling collectibles. In Airbnb, it was staying in a bedroom at someone's house. It was community-based commerce. It was economic empowerment for the host or seller side. There are huge trust and safety issues. I mean, it was the identical business. So it's funny, I went to the banker and goes, I gotta meet this guy. I went from complete skeptic to complete believer in 30 minutes. And he said, funny, he asked to meet one guy at the conference, and it was you, because he got the eBay thing before I got the eBay thing. So for me, it was completely deja vu. So the Airbnb marketplace, probably the closest competitor it has is a company called HomeAway, which is a classified site for vacation rentals. And HomeAway's predecessor, it's a roll-up of a number of companies, VRBO, started in 1995. Airbnb was founded in 2008, so 13 years later. Airbnb this year is just blown by HomeAway in terms of total user spend or user spend on the system. Airbnb right now is doing about 1 million nights a day, people staying in Airbnbs. So this, we think this has the opportunity to be one of the iconic e-commerce businesses around. So I used Amazon up front as the example of a retailer. Turns out that is wrong. The net's preeminent retail business also discovered the power of marketplaces. So say you search for that same soccer ball. You'll see that it is in stock, but it happened to ship from a company called National Sports Distributors. And if you don't want to buy it from there, you can buy it from Unlimited Dream Company and Simply Sports. Turns out Amazon has been growing their marketplace very, very aggressively, and they started it when a company called half.com first kind of developed an innovation that released the opportunity or made it obvious that you could build a marketplace on top of a retail business. So the Half founder had registered a URL, this is way back in the day, I think the late 90s, called eBazon, because his business was a combination of eBay and Amazon. We ended up buying it kind of said, oh gosh, we can start competing with Amazon. Amazon tried to buy it after we bought it, saying, oh, we can compete with eBay. So Amazon started a business called internal initiative called Half Killer and launched this marketplace in response to half.com. And so, as you can see, much of the product shown on Amazon is from these third-party sellers. And the third-party business has exploded for Amazon. Early on, 2009, the marketplace sales were relatively small. At this point, they're growing, this is through 2014, based on an analyst estimate. They're growing at roughly double the pace of their first-party business. 1P is, the top line is first-party, the bottom line is, the orange is the marketplace business. And according to the analysts last year, Amazon sold more product from third parties than they did as a first-party merchant. And that's a pretty big deal, because they sell a lot of product. The other thing that is important to understand in marketplaces is marketplaces have margins. Remember the first slide. So Amazon's gross margins as a retailer are just around 25%. Their gross margin as a marketplace are 80-90%. Now it's on a smaller number, but we believe that one of the key drivers of profitability in Amazon, and we believe the core businesses at Amazon are very, very profitable, are the fact that they're layering on this high margin business on top of essentially close to a break-even first-party business. But this third-party business is so lucrative that they're earning lots of money that they're then investing in other initiatives very aggressively. So many of the best internet businesses and what we would call Internet 1.0, the first wave of companies, turned out to be marketplace businesses. On the consumer-to-consumer side, you had eBay. China, you had Taobao. Japan, you had Rakuten, and as well as Yahoo Japan. Mercado Libre dominates Latin American marketplaces. And then now you have Amazon.com. On the B2C side, you have companies like OpenTable, Tmall in China. Auto Trader, a car site. Just Eat would be a European example, as well as ASOS has just started a nascent marketplace on top of their retail business, kind of running the Amazon playbook. So 1.0, marketplace has created a ton of value. And so that's great for investors. Why are marketplaces good for consumers? Network effects we described, there's more selection. But the couple of things about marketplace to note is, one, the community does almost all the work. Early on when I was managing eBay, Amazon had 10 times, 50 times more employees than we did, because they were building warehouses, they were picking out of their own warehouses, they were shipping, they were procuring merchandise, the whole thing. eBay, we had our community doing that. They were doing all the hard work. So massive difference in ability to scale, because a virtual company can scale when it attracts users. Think Airbnb. There's no limit on how fast they can scale if users show up virtually. Second, no physical constraints on growth. It turns out a retailer can only sell what they buy and what they have in inventory. If you underbuy at Christmas, you can't grow beyond what you bought, because it's hard to scale that. Marketplaces, there is no physical constraint on growth. Marketplaces can just go to the moon, because again, there's no limiter on the company's ability to scale other than keep the servers going. Lastly, they can be incredibly capital efficient. If you try to compete with Amazon now, you need warehouses, you need inventory, you need all those employees. In a marketplace, you don't. And go back to eBay, they raised under $10 million of venture capital in aggregate. And according to the founder, they never cashed the check that Benchmark gave them. They didn't need the capital. They wanted the safety stock in the bank, and they wanted the help of Benchmark in growing a company. So they actually didn't even need to take the $10 million, it turns out. So a lot of reasons consumers would love marketplaces. So we believe we're seeing a marketplace renaissance, kind of what we call 2.0. Suddenly there are a number of new, very interesting marketplaces that have emerged. On the C2C side, a couple examples: Airbnb, we just discussed before. Wallapop, classified site in Europe. We just announced our investment in OfferUp, a classified site in local classified / marketplace business in the United States. On the B2C side, Uber, Lyft, and BlaBlaCar are doing rides on a marketplace basis. Instacart is a marketplace where you can get groceries delivered from a number of local merchants, and you have Lyft providing lots of sellers with the opportunity to meet demand in there. So enormous activity in 2.0. So why now? We probably point to two reasons, particularly in the United States. First, the disruptor, Craigslist, is being disrupted. Alex alluded to this in his analogy to what's happening in financial services. But Craigslist was a very important business in the U.S. We'll go into a little more detail on that. And then smartphones. A lot of the businesses we saw in 2.0 on the last page are completely enabled by smartphones and would essentially be impossible without the smartphone. So let's start with Craigslist. Craigslist was an early net phenomenon. Is one of the largest sites in the net, and it basically has destroyed newspaper economics in the United States. They gave away classifieds. All the classified business moved to Craigslist. Newspapers lost their most lucrative source of revenue. It went down by something like 2/3 in the last 15 years. The revenue from classifieds collapsed by 2/3. So they badly disrupted newspapers. But the Craigslist founders are very unusual founders. They're somewhere between social activists and communists, and they have not run their business in a value maximizing way, to say the least. So the biggest sin in technology is you fail to innovate. And if you fail to innovate, bad things can happen, even for a disruptor. So let's take an example. This is the Craigslist site in 2005. Look closely. This is the Craigslist site 10 years later in 2015, in case you missed it. I mean, they added a few links. When's the last time you saw blue hyperlinks on a homepage? Now, what we did do is we updated the computer. This is the MacBook Air. This is the, our AV people are really good at that stuff. But I mean, there has been no change in the Craigslist site. And without innovation, you get left behind. So I'm a passionate mountain biker. And here's a search for mountain bikes on Craigslist and on a Wallapop, I believe. One is an engaging picture, easy to flow through, show it's all for sale. Craigslist is a list of blue links, not surprisingly. I think Craigslist actually means blue link in some language. And then and you have to do all the work. The listings aren't current. I mean, it's just a completely different user experience. So why is it why are marketplaces better than a classified site? Tons of reasons. One, the sellers build an identity over time, so you know who you are trading with. You know if they've been a reliable trade partner in earlier thing. Which is the reputation they build. Typically, they enable online payments, so you don't meet up and trade cash, in the dark park at midnight. There's trust and safety. Because you have identity, you can track, and payments, you can track the activity on the site, and work hard to weed out the bad actors on the site. It reduces friction. One click you can be buying, and there's complete transparency into the item, the seller's reputation, things like that. It's just a better user experience. So there are a number of marketplaces that are basically what we call hollowing out Craigslist. They're going after individual segments on the Craigslist business and saying, okay, we're going to tailor a product to this specific vertical and do it better. Airbnb was rooms wanted essentially on Craigslist. That was the venue that existed before Airbnb came along. Care.com for childcare, rideshare, Hail, Lyft, blah, blah, Uber, tickets, StubHub, Viagogo, cars, Auto Trader. I mean, huge, large businesses being built off of Craigslist. Then there's the next generation of companies targeting other areas, say housing, activities, food and beverage, jobs, personals, furniture. If you provide a highly tailored marketplace experience instead of just a blue link, people respond to it. So in this case, the disruptor is being disrupted in a really meaningful way. And Craigslist, which was one of the largest and fastest growing internet properties in the world, particularly in the US, has now stopped growing and is basically, essentially being hollowed out. It's quite a nice service to the Valley ecosystem. Second driver is global smartphone penetration. It's hard to underestimate how big a deal this is, particularly in the consumer side of the world. People are walking around with supercomputers in their pockets. I got the chance to visit the Science Museum in London, which was a very nice museum. By the way, the cosmonaut exhibit is fascinating if you get a chance. They have a Cray supercomputer there, one of the early ones. I mean, it's the damnedest thing. There are so many wires inside. It was really, I'd never seen it. It was really cool. The smartphone in your pocket has more computing power. And so people, close to 2 billion people, are walking around now all day with smartphones in their hands, in their pockets, in their wallets, which just opens up a ton of opportunity. One, it enables a mobile workforce. Uber, Lyft, Instacart would be impossible if the provider side didn't have that supercomputer in their pocket to tell them exactly what to do, to tell the company exactly where they are. Just, can you imagine? I mean, Instacart in the last world she walking around with a list of the groceries she had to pick, with the driver sitting up front just waiting for her to finish, because there's no sense of optimization without that global smartphone. And when I was at eBay, I used to think one of my biggest failings there was I didn't build a services business. It seemed incredibly obvious to me that eBay with the community and PayPal with the payments should support a services business. I now think the market wasn't ready because the smartphone didn't exist and the provider side wasn't continually online. So a service provider who doesn't respond to the web query isn't really helpful. With a smartphone, we believe you can build out services businesses. So it opens up a whole new set of potential services: grocery delivery, restaurant delivery, ride share, to tick through the list. The second part is it enables mobile-first experiences. This is an example of OfferUp, which is that local marketplace business. It used to be if you wanted to sell on Craigslist, you'd sell the chair in your garage on Craigslist. You'd go in, take a picture, go back to your computer, upload the picture, go to the website, load the picture into the website, describe what it is, and put it for sale. With something like OfferUp, with a mobile-first experience, you walk in, you take a picture, you type a few words, and it's listed. To browse OfferUp, you can do it in the tube on the way to work. It's a mobile-first experience. It's just a better experience for a lot of people. So Andreessen Horowitz has been extremely aggressive in trying to identify interesting marketplace businesses. Airbnb was the first one we did, but we have a 3D printing marketplace in Shapeways. Lyft is rideshare. Twice was secondary clothing. OfferUp and Instacart we talked about. There are also a pile of early stage seed investments we've done. Probably my favorite couple are one, dogvacay.com. Who has a dog here? When you go on vacation, typically incredibly hard. What do you do with it? You stuff it, in a pound, or you give it to a friend. Dog lovers you're next door to where you live, can earn money by taking care of your dog, and it's seamless. My other favorite is Science Exchange, which is basically sharing economy meets sophisticated scientific experiment equipment. So if a lab has underutilized science equipment that they purchase but only are using 30% of the time, they can try to make it available to the other 70% of time to earn income and offset the cost of that thing. So we are widely enthusiastic about marketplaces, and if you know any good ones, please let us know. With that, thank you very much.